Hey everyone, welcome back to Low Luxury. Today we are doing something that I'm super excited about and something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and that is we're going to do a tier list. And we're not going to do just one. We're doing just one today, but next week we'll have another. So today we are going to do a tier list for luxury streetwear brands. Now, what does that mean? I mean, it's kind of nebulous, right? You're probably going to agree and disagree with some of the things I put in these categories, but really think of brands like OffWhite as your prototype for a luxury streetwear brand. So they're not, Gucci, but they're also not Supreme. Like, those are the two ends of the spectrum, right? They're in between. They're doing streetwear, but at more luxury price points, like the type of brands that you're going to be paying $200 plus for just a t-shirt from. So if you don't know how this works, we've got all the brands laid out, and then there's basically a list of different tiers. S is the top. So S tier means like unbeatable, best of the best, unimpeachable, great track record, everything like that. And then it's going all the way down to F, F being failure, right? We've all been to school, we know what an F is. It ain't good. So without further ado, let's get into it. But first, I've looked into it, and a very, very small percentage of you are actually subscribed to the channel. It's completely free. Just press that button and you will not regret it. Thank you so much. So we're starting off with 1017 Alyx 9SM. I'm just going to call it Alyx for short. Y'all know what I'm talking about. So this brand is run by Matthew M. Williams, who, due to the massive success of Alyx, was tapped to run Givenchy. And he's been, I'd say, quite successful there. I've been a little bit disappointed with some of this stuff, but people seem to be really liking it. Lots of celebrities, Kylie Jenner or whatever, wearing this stuff, so good for him. But now we're going to be looking here at his original brand, Alyx, and this is basically, the purest of the pure luxury streetwear. That's what he's known for. It's more in the tech wear end of the spectrum, like sleek black nylon, the roller coaster buckles, stuff like that. And for me, I like Alyx, but at the same time, it's definitely like middle of the road luxury streetwear. The tailoring for Alyx, though, is actually really, really good, really underrated. I'd say they're actually best with their tailoring. The footwear is not too impressive to me. I made a video about that recently that I really don't like his footwear. I think he's a bad footwear designer. The more techwear stuff, it's cool. It's not so much up my alley. So really, outside of the tailoring, I don't feel like he's pushing the envelope on too much, but he doesn't super disappoint me in many ways outside of sometimes the footwear. So I say, in my mind, that puts him at a solid C. So moving on then to Ambush. Ambush, I have made no secret, are one of my favorite kind of luxury streetwear brands. I believe they are owned now by LVMH, or maybe they're with New Guards. I'd have to look that up. But, it's Yoon Ambush. She's killer. She's awesome at, jewelry designing. I have a necklace from them. I'd love to have more Ambush jewelry, though. But they do just really, really cool Japanese-inspired kind of luxury streetwear. Really well made. I just love the styles that they've got. It's kind of minimalist sometimes, but they always have these really interesting tweaks and weird elements going on, like capes and extra elements coming off of shirts and jackets and stuff. They are not necessarily, I think this is a brand that is going to go really far. I think we have not seen the best from Ambush yet. I really think they're just picking up steam and they just keep getting better and better, but they haven't gotten there yet. So while they are one of my favorites, I love bigging them up. They don't quite belong at that S tier, maybe not even at that A tier quite yet. So for that reason, I think I'm going to have to put Ambush in B. I think that's right about where they belong right now, but with time, I definitely wouldn't be surprised if they start pushing into that A tier potentially. All right, next up here is Amiri. And Amiri is one that people love to just bash on, and I kind of get it. It's a little goofy, a little earnest. It's kind of got that Just Don luxury basketballer vibe, which I think is just super goofy and I'm not about. But at the same time, Amiri makes some really good stuff too. Some of the footwear is really cool. There's some really clean tailoring that's almost more in a fear of God direction. But then bundled in with that, you get all of this really, really wacky stuff like leather basketball shorts. It starts looking like MCM or something. which I don't hate MCM, but it's just not really what I'm looking for out of like a luxury streetwear brand. So I think there's some identity issues within Amiri. Obviously, they popped off really, really hard with the jeans, and all of these kind of fuckboys were wearing them. And then people started hating on that, so that kind of brought the whole brand perception down in the kind of like cool kids' minds, I'd say. But I've got an Amiri piece that I love. It's this huge like shearling, furry hoodie. I fucking love that hoodie. But a hoodie is not enough to put them into a top tier. So Amiri, I think, just due to those identity issues, I would put in the D tier. I'm tempted to bump them up to C, but I think D is just about right. Next up is Chrome Hearts, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of you on this channel know about this channel because of my Chrome Hearts video. It's easily my most divisive video. I think it's got like an even 50-50 like to dislike ratio, which if you know anything about YouTube, that ratio is really, really horrible. So people do not like my opinions on Chrome Hearts, but I really haven't budged. Well, actually, I've budged a little bit. I've gotten a lot of comments from people, and they've made some really good points that I actually made in the video, but my video kind of criticizing them was pretty hyperbolic, and I really wanted to hammer home how much I didn't like some Chrome Hearts stuff, but there are good elements here. Their jewelry is really top-notch and really well-crafted and interesting. Their other accessories, some really weird kind of Supreme-esque like baseball bats and stuff like that. Those types of accessories are really interesting. Obviously the jeans, I actually didn't even touch on the jeans in the video, but that's obviously a huge part of the brand. They don't really do it for me, but I can understand the appeal. It's really their ready-to-wear, like the hoodies and t-shirts that I think are just a complete joke. So I'm really tempted, like, people would probably think I'm going to put them in the F tier, and I'm very tempted because I really, really hate some of that Chrome Hearts stuff. Let me look ahead though, how much stuff? Chrome Hearts, just for the haters, okay, I'm going to put them in the F tier. Realistically, probably more of a D, but just because even the stuff that I do think is cool or interesting still doesn't actually do anything for me personally, and this is my personal tier list. So for me, I have to put them in F, I think. It's just not for me, and even the stuff that is for me, I still wouldn't pay money for. So F, sorry. All right, next up is going to be D squared, and oh boy, we've just got another one that I've made a video of criticizing. So D squared is a brand that maybe more than anyone else on this list, and here's the thing about these luxury streetwear brands, is a lot of them, they lack a clear identity. They just do whatever is kind of street, whatever they think will look cool, but it kind of bounces around all these different styles, and that's just a real consistent issue, I would say, across the board for many of these brands. But D squared, they've been around for a long time, and they still haven't figured it out. I don't know what a D squared piece is. I don't know what their really vibe is. It's just clothing, well-made clothing, sometimes even well-designed clothing, but it just doesn't tell any sort of coherent story or anything. So for that reason, and the fact that the creators, the Caton twins, are just complete weirdos who creep me out, they are also going to end up in my F tier because it just does nothing for me. And I'm starting to notice that our tier list is looking a little bit lopsided. I'm looking like a bit of a hater here, but hopefully this will turn around here. And next, okay, interesting, we have Fear of God. And they kind of stand alone in this list, actually, because they're not doing anything super loud or out there. They're actually really, really minimalist, which is kind of rare in the streetwear, luxury streetwear space, where a lot of stuff is really, really loud and really in your face and aggressive. But Fear of God is actually really understated. The ways in which they're more out there is in their fits. They're really relaxed, oversized fits, but also very, very carefully considered at the same time. And I think Jerry Lorenzo is doing some really cool stuff. I'm thinking mostly about mainline here. I don't think it's fair to throw in all of these sublines, but of course, Fear of God, they've got Essentials and now they've got the Fear of God Athletics with Adidas. He just signed with them. So they're doing a lot of stuff, but I'm just thinking about Fear of God mainline here. They've done some really cool stuff with merging mules with sneakers. The tailoring is really, really nice. I actually really loved the collaboration they did with Hermenegildo Zenya. Jesus, I probably just butchered that name. I'm sorry. It's been a while since I've said that one out loud. But I think Fear of God, they really actually stand apart in this field and are doing something that nobody else on this list is doing. So for that reason, I'm going to put them really up towards the top of this list in the A tier because I think they're a really standout example of how to do streetwear within the luxury space, and they've carved out a little section of that is totally their own, so I really love that. Next up is going to be GCDS, and if you don't know, that stands for God Can't Destroy Streetwear, which is one of the cringiest names of all time. Like, I would just drop that. I get why they go with the acronym because the full name is just a complete laughing stock. But that being said, outside of the name, the clothes are pretty interesting. I tend to think of them as kind of like a streetwear, sportswear kind of Tom Brown. So where Tom Brown is really high luxury and very tailored, preppy, GCDS is doing the same kind of stuff with the sports kind of bars on the arms, stuff like that, but they're doing it in a much more relaxed streetwear kind of way. So that does hold some interest for me, and they do have some really cool pieces, but they're also, to me, a bit samey. So for that reason, I'm going to have to put them in D. Again, it's kind of similar to Amiri, so I think they belong here, where they have some pieces that I really, really like and that really impress me, but as a whole, I'd just like to see them push it a little bit more. Next up is going to be Heron Preston. Heron Preston, so sick. I'm such a big fan of his. Obviously doing big things for Black designers, really leading that charge along with like Virgil Abloh, people like that. And more he's doing things sustainably. So you'll notice more and more of his stuff being made with organic cotton, sustainable materials, regenerated materials, stuff like that. So he's really working hard. What the hell just happened? Sorry about that. So he's really working hard to do his part to kind of bring fashion forward and do things in a way that other people might be scared to or aren't doing, because I don't know why people don't do things sustainably in this day and age, but most of them don't, and Heron Preston does. And even that being said, that wouldn't say much if the designs weren't good. But the designs are good. They're more on the streetwear end of the spectrum for a lot of these brands. A lot of these brands actually border more on the luxury side of things, I'd say. But Heron Preston, it's a lot of hoodies, t-shirts, even like tactical vests, jeans, stuff like that. But they're all done really, really well. It's a lot of kind of graphic stuff, what you'd expect from streetwear. So, man, this is tough. I think just because he's doing it really, really well, I'm going to put him in B, but he's not necessarily doing quite enough yet to push the boundaries to get him into these top spots, I would say. Next up is Marcelo Bernard, County of Milan. Now, this is another brand that's under the New Guards group, like I think Heron Preston is New Guards group, OffWhite is New Guards group, Palm Angels is New Guards group. They own a bunch of these kind of luxury streetwear brands, all under the same umbrella. You'll see them all, they're made in the same factories, stuff like that. So similar quality levels for all of these brands. But Marcelo Bernard, it's interesting. It's kind of like raver streetwear, but high-end raver streetwear, of course, is all these brands are high-end. But obviously, he's got some staple pieces, like with those kind of wing t-shirts and sweatshirts and hoodies and things like that. But at the same time, there's a bit of a schizophrenic nature going on here. There's some weird, different graphic t-shirts that he does, different prints and things, and I sometimes have trouble seeing where his point of view is and where he's heading with things. And I have trouble seeing how it all pieces together into a coherent vision for the brand of Marcelo Bernard. But again, there are pieces that I do like. But I'm still waiting to see that kind of next level out of him. So I think he's going to belong in D here. And man, I'm just a hater. I'm such a big hater. What's going on here? Next up is going to be Needles. So this is a Japanese brand, the same parent company as like Engineered Garments and things like that. I think Needles is really cool. Their track stuff is incredible, really cool, like animal print track jackets and track pants, like track suits and stuff like that, but a lot of other really cool pieces as well. But this is a brand, it's not as expansive as some of the others, but what they do, they do really, really well and better than anyone else. So again, they've carved out their own space that is entirely their own. I think some of the animal print stuff, maybe Wacko Maria could fit into, but that's more of a like Hawaiian rockabilly type vibe, whereas this is more sportswear, like track suits and types of stuff like that. So for that reason, I think Needles, they're slotting perfectly into that C space. Just for the lack of expansiveness in the range of things that they're doing, I can't push them further than that, but because they do it so well, there's no way they belong any lower than that either. Next up, oh man, we're here. We made it to OffWhite. Okay, so this, I said at the beginning of the video, this is like the prototypical luxury streetwear brand. At least for me, when I think of luxury streetwear, what that means, OffWhite is the prime example of that. So it's super high-end, super well-made, but also very street at the same time. And OffWhite is very, very expansive, right? That is just, they do so many things. They do tailoring, sportswear, like everything you can imagine. They do. The knits are actually really incredible. The footwear is fantastic, from the Volks to the Odysseys to the even dress shoes like the Derbies and things like that are really, really cool. So OffWhite gets some hate, but they really push this entire idea forward. I don't know if half of these brands would be what they are without OffWhite kind of leading that charge and leading that popularity to this kind of idea of high-end streetwear. So for that reason, because they just epitomize everything here, I have to put them into the S tier. They are the first S tier brand, and a lot of people are going to hate on me for putting that up there, but it's really about what they mean for the entire space here, and the fact that half of these brands wouldn't be where they are without OffWhite, in my opinion. It just has to put them in that S tier. It makes them stand above everything else. Next up, we are going to be looking at Palm Angels. Now, if you've watched my channel, you'll probably know that I'm a big fan of Palm Angels. I really like their style. Again, probably most famous for their tracksuits and things like that. But from t-shirts to hoodies to jeans, pants, like they do it all as well. And I think it's really cool. I really like the motifs. They really speak to me. Even though they've done some more like Western kind of deserty vibes in recent seasons that I actually really like. And they're also always doing, maybe similar to kind of someone like Ambush, doing these really interesting little tweaks to pieces that put them over the top from being a typical streetwear piece to being something more high fashion and more fashion forward. And again, also like OffWhite, I think they really epitomize this space, and they are pushing this space forward and giving people a ceiling to look towards to be like, that is what a high-end streetwear brand can be doing. I don't think they quite live up to that as much as OffWhite, but just due to the influence, again, that they wield in the space and the fact that I really like what they do, they're going to be our next A-tier brand. And all of a sudden, this is starting to look really kind of fanboyish and really like, I don't know, I'm starting to feel like I'm about to say that like my favorite artist is Britney Spears or something, like just whoever's the most popular person of all time. That's what I like. That's what it's starting to look like up top here, but I swear that's not the case. It's just that importance. I have to weigh it highly. Next up, we are going to be looking at Pierre Moss from Kirby Jean Raymond. He is a next level dude. Like, he is super, super important to this entire space. Even just politically and his ideas, he is kind of he's very outspoken, but he's right about everything he says. You may not like the way he says it, but he is dead on with what he's talking about. And the designs are really cool as well. Again, a lot of really cool kind of sportswear inspired stuff, but also the tailoring is fantastic. There's a lot of really interesting ideas and motifs, like they did this guitar jacket thing in the past season that was really cool and something new from the brand. I'd say they're still on the younger side and still figuring it out. But they also have the Reebok subline, which I love, this kind of subline that's cheaper. And even more so than like Fear of God Essentials, Pierre Moss and Reebok by Pierre Moss are really two sides of the same coin. Like Kirby Jean Raymond doesn't let people carry one without carrying the other. So they're really interconnected, so I don't mind lumping them together. And the footwear with that, I love the Pierre Moss Reebok footwear. I think it's really, really cool, kind of chunky stuff. So I think we're still going to see more from Pierre Moss for sure, but they're already off to a really great start. So I'm going to put them right in that B tier there, and I think that's a great spot for them right now. Next up, we're going to be looking at Raph Simmons, Daddy Raph. And some of you might not even agree with the inclusion of Raph Simmons on this list. He's very much high luxury. He's been doing runway shows since, like the 90s, right? So how can you include him on a list with like, I don't know, Alyx or something? It's different levels, and I recognize that. But the thing is, even maybe more so than OffWhite up here, Raph Simmons is the godfather of luxury streetwear. He was doing graphics on stuff way before it was cool. He was doing, obviously, think of like the Riot bomber jacket. Like bomber jackets in high fashion was not like a thing, but Raph Simmons brought it in and made it cool. So he's always been looking to the streets and streetwear and bringing those things into high fashion and combining those. So I think that's as good a definition as luxury streetwear as you can get. So for that reason, he's S tier. Even like not a single one of these brands would probably exist without Raph Simmons. He opened those doors. He opened the doors that then brands like OffWhite came and blasted through, right? But those doors would have been totally locked, I think, without Raph Simmons bringing these styles into the consciousness of the high fashion clientele, the people that actually have the money to spend on stuff like this. Next up, we're going to be looking at Rhys Cooper. Rhys Cooper is someone who seemingly has a really big fan base. Whenever he presents, people seem really hyped on him when he's on like fashion show schedules. I see comment after comment saying, I'm really looking forward to Rhys Cooper. So I've been paying attention to him, and I'm going to be honest, he has yet to wow me. And that may be just due to the fact that it's not my style. It's kind of like outdoors wear, but to me it kind of looks like, if you've ever gone to Cabela's, like the fishing place, or like Bass Pro Shops or something. I have some friends from high school that got really into fishing and they turned into that kind of guy. It looks like the kind of stuff that they wear, obviously done very well in a kind of like fashion-y type of way, but just that style is so antithetical to everything that I'm about. I'm not an outdoor. I go hiking. Hey, don't get me wrong. I go hiking. I go outside. I go skateboarding. But like, I'm not out there fly fishing, so that style is just not for me. So I'm sorry, Rhys Cooper. Obviously, the clothes are nice. They're well made. People seem to really like them. I'm happy for all your success, Rhys. But for me, you are a D tier. It just doesn't do much of anything for me, unfortunately. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at Rude. Rude is an interesting one. What do I say here? So I think there are some similarities to Amiri and GCDS here. This is tough. So Rude is a brand that I think is making a name for themselves, but that name is potentially being made before there's anything too interesting worth making that name off of, if that makes sense. So you see the logo t-shirts out here, the hats and things like that, but I think they have yet to really break in and show why they deserve to be being worn by all the people that are wearing them. I think the styles are cool. I think they're doing some interesting stuff. They're doing some kind of like ugly stuff, but in a way that makes it kind of cool and ironic in an interesting way. Like some of those graphics are so ugly, but in a fun way. So again, I want to see more from Rude. I have high hopes. I think they're going in the right direction, but for now they're D. I wouldn't be surprised if within a year they're bumping up into a C, but for now they're a D for me. Next up, we're going to be looking at Sakai. Obviously, probably best known for the Nike collaborations, from the Blazer to the Vapor waffles and the LD waffles. I'm getting everything mixed up now. I think that was all of them. but some really, really cool stuff. They just recently announced a collaboration with KAWS, the artist, and I'm a huge, huge KAWS fan, so I'm really excited for that collab. But Sakai, they do really cool deconstructed clothing, really well known for their outerwear. Their like jackets, these long trench coats and things. They're just super, super cool. They have these really cool cuts and slits in different panels, but even their knits are really impressive. And this is just a brand that I think has had a lot of influence on a lot of these other brands that you see here, but is maybe sometimes actually a bit of an unsung hero. I think Sakai is actually a bit underappreciated within the fashion scene, even though they do get a lot of recognition for the Nikes and stuff like that. So I think Sakai is A tier for me. Like, Sakai is super important to that idea of melding this high fashion technique and deconstruction with kind of streetwear, sportswear, things like that. I find that to be a really, really important combination for the entire history of this kind of space here. All right, we're getting there, guys. 3 left. So now we have got Stone Island. Stone Island is an interesting one. So they obviously super, super well known for outerwear. They have incredible, incredible fabrications. They've got a crazy R&D department where they're always trying to come up with the coolest new kind of tech plastic fabrics and stuff like that that, you know, are the most weatherproof and iridescent and stuff like that. So the R&D is untouchable. The silhouettes, though, are a bit more plain to me. They don't always do it for me. The colorways sometimes are a bit odd. Like, sometimes they're just throwing these kind of like ugly puke colors on things just because it's like, whoa, we've got this crazy tech fabric and now it's going to be this weird digital camo print that makes no sense. But again, an incredibly influential brand, and one that kind of stands alone in their space. I'd say them and maybe Moncler on the more luxury side of things really own this kind of tech outerwear space that is obviously super, super important and a huge part of any kind of luxury streetwear diet. So I think they belong in the B tier for me. Next up, we're going to be looking at Undercover. This, of course, another really historic Japanese brand, and I think they are also a bit underappreciated. So people know a lot of the more standard pieces from them, but this is a brand that does like full runway collections with really, really forward-thinking stuff, like almost on a Raph Simmons level or something like that. The knits are really incredible. The outerwear, there's crazy geometric panels and things. The most recent one they did, they have like these Transformers jackets that are just next level shit, and just incredibly influential, like a true unsung hero of high-end streetwear. So this to me is a total A tier, okay? Like that, this is a great brand that is doing really important things in the space and is actually pushing it forward and trying to do new things within luxury streetwear, which I really appreciate. And our final entry here is Vetements. So this brand is run by the brother of Dimna Visalia, who is now the creative director for Balenciaga. And Dimna also, he used to actually run Vetements with his brother, but he moved to Balenciaga. He kept doing both for a little while, but eventually he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna focus on Balenciaga and I'm gonna let you just run Vetements on your own. And since then, things have gotten a bit crazy with Vetements. So you've seen this back and forth on social media of the two brands. Oh, I didn't mean to drop them into F. Maybe they'll belong there, but I don't know. How do I even get that out? I made a mistake, guys. Anyway, you see these back and forths on social media where Vetements is making ripoffs of Balenciaga that were maybe ripoffs of Vetements in the first place. It's crazy. But even now, so Vetements back in the day, they were really doing like ironic anti-fashion, like DHL delivery driver outfits and things, and charging thousands of dollars for them and saying, this is high fashion. And people were like, what do you mean it's high fashion? It's like, it's high fashion because we say it's high fashion. So that's kind of interesting, and it makes you think a little bit, and it's kind of funny. It has a sense of humor to it, so that was cool. But now that Dimna has moved on, things are a bit trickier because Vetements even outside of the back and forth social media stuff with Balenciaga, a lot of this stuff looks like just rip-off versions of what Balenciaga is doing. Maybe that's a family influence, maybe that's just they're both moving in similar stylistic directions, but it really, really looks like Vetements is still trying to cash in on Demna's creativity. So, that being said, when you look at this stuff in a vacuum, it's still really, really cool. Sometimes it's cringy and cheesy, and like they did a Motorhead collaboration, and it's just like, okay, metalhead clothes in high fashion, whatever. But at the same time, if you look at it in a vacuum outside of Balenciaga, if you ignore that connection and the fact that it's very similar stylistically, there's still a lot of really cool pieces there. So this is a tricky one for me. Some days I look at them and I'm tempted to put them in the F. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you doing rip-off Balenciaga? But it's still well-made stuff. It's still well-designed stuff. They're a C. I think they're a C, and it really remains to be seen with what they do in the future, whether it falls lower than that or whether it can go higher. Because a few years ago, Vetements, they would have been a solid A-B, I think. Like, they were really doing something special, but now things are just in a kind of in-between period where I think they're figuring themselves out. So I'm really excited to see where Vetements goes in the future. So that is our tier list for luxury streetwear brands. Now, argue with me in the comments if you think I picked the right ones. If you've got other ones you put in, if you disagree with any of my choices on where I put things, please let me know. I'm excited to hear from you. And next week, so next Wednesday, we will be doing another tier list. So this one was luxury streetwear. Next Wednesday, we're going to do a tier list for high luxury brands. And I don't want to give all of it away, but you can probably figure out the things that weren't on this list. So we're talking about like the Gucci's, Balenciagas, brands like that. It's going to be really, really cool, and I'm really excited to get into more of these with you. I had a lot of fun doing this, so thank you for watching. Take a look at the other video on screen here, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.